everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tuesdays with Roger. I'm Diana Guveritz, and once again, we are here with Roger Ettner of Recon Analytics. And I am so happy to say this is our 100th episode. Yay! And for our 100th episode, Roger has a special announcement.
Well, since Guenther and I both speak German, since we're now up with 100, we're going to do this in German. Willkommen, Guenther. Mich freut es wirklich, dich hier bei Dienstags mit Roger begrüßen zu können.
Mich natürlich auch.
Yeah, but joke aside, since our audience speaks English, we'll actually do this in English, even though it's 100th episode, and I'm so excited to have such a special guest here with us.
And that's right. Today, our special guest, of course, we are very pleased to have him. It's Sprint COO Guenther Ottendorfer, and we are so happy to have you join us. Thank you for hopping on with us.
Yeah, hello. Thanks for having me. I'm very happy, and congratulations to the 100th episode. And I'm sure we will have a great talk.
I am looking forward to it. So I wanted to dive right in with you, Guenther. I know that you guys have been talking a lot about gigabit LTE. So I thought maybe you could just start by giving us an overview of what Sprint's plan is to roll out gigabit LTE and what the components of that are.
Yes. So we are very excited that because we are so spectrum rich, the foundation of our LTE Plus network is our 2.5 spectrum. And with that spectrum, we always knew that the time would come where we could bring gigabit LTE services to the US. And we have demonstrated this week in New Orleans on the basis of 3 building blocks. The first building blocks is 3 20 megahertz carriers of 2.5 spectrum with carrier aggregation. So 60 megahertz of our licensed spectrum. And that is very important because that's kind of the foundation for this. Then we needed Qualcomm to provide their latest chipset. And their latest chipset is capable of doing 256 QAM, the highest modulation scheme. And that highest modulation scheme in combination or embedded in a Motorola smartphone that has 4 antennas, 4x4 MIMO, gave us the capability of having gigabit class speeds as we demonstrated in the Smoothie King Arena in New Orleans.
Great. And before I turn it over to Roger for a question, I just wanted to talk to you about, to see if you can explain, does HPUE play into your gigabit plans at all? I know that was another recent announcement you guys came out with.
Yes, so that is another great feature of the yet to be announced Motorola smartphone. It will also have HPUE. HPUE, high performance user equipment, increases the uplink and it makes our 2.5 spectrum perform radio wise from the characteristics like 1.9. So that is a big improvement for customer experience because it means better indoor coverage and also better outdoor on the cell edge. And so we are very excited about that, and it will play a big role in our future evolution and a big role in our gigabit LTE plans. And we are very happy that this year you will see a lot of phones that will have it embedded.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Roger. I don't want to hog the spotlight. So Roger, go ahead if you have any questions.
No worries. So, a lot of announcements you made at Mobile World Congress and a great demonstration on a live network to have the 3 carrier aggregation, 256 QAM, gigabit speed. When would you expect for end consumers to see this? Sometime this year? And how quickly are you able to roll that out nationwide, or at least in the big markets?
Well, great question. So I would fully expect that we can see it starting this year and then rolling over into next year. We will work on getting the network ready, doing the necessary upgrades on the network side. As you know, we have been pioneers with carrier aggregation, and we are always combining 20 megahertz channels, which is important because it gives you the least overhead and the maximum efficiency in carrier aggregation. So in more than 100 markets, we have 3 carrier aggregation. More than 250 markets we have with 2 carrier aggregation. We will continue to roll that out further. And then the other factor you will need will be capable devices that have 4x4 MIMO and that can process 256 QAM. And I expect also that to come mid second half of this year. And so it will be, I think important thing is this is not about kind of a big bang approach. It will be a transition that will gradually evolve our network into these gigabit speeds in many places.
Great. And you demonstrated at Mobile World Congress 64 by 64 MIMO. That would like improve data throughputs by another factor of 3 to 6. I would expect that to be further out, right?
Yes, that is probably a topic in deployment for 2018. I fully expect us to trial it this year, but then in deployment, I expect it next year. Important is probably for your audience, the difference is 4x4 MIMO is in the devices, while massive MIMO, and it's actually with the polarization, it's 128 antenna elements, is on the base station side. So what we will do is that in sectors that have heavy load, we will replace the existing antenna with a massive MIMO antenna. That massive MIMO antenna has 128 input and output streams, and that will give us the capacity increase by a factor 5 to 10. And I fully think you're right. This year will be kind of the start of it, but next year will be where we will see deployment of it.
Yeah, I just testified a few weeks before Congress about spectrum, and I highlighted the same thing that you did, that we need larger channel configurations, 20 by 20 megahertz as the standard. And also, as I view this as like a building block towards 5G, that we really need to improve and ease the deployment issues around this. And I can imagine that there are some municipalities where going back to an antenna starts a whole issue of permitting again, whereas other municipalities are more enlightened and know that this actually helps their citizens.
Absolutely. So what you see is, on the one hand, there's a lot of municipalities that are really interested in smart cities and that want to provide their citizens with fast internet services and also fast mobile services. And there we see a lot of support, and that is great. And I think that's also what the general policy directive is. The United States want to be a leader in 5G. If you want to be a leader in 5G, it is necessary the densification of the networks. With our densification strategy, we have been a front runner in implementing that. And we see that a lot of cities, municipalities are very interested in it. We see also in some other cases that there is still some resistance. I think it is the job of the operators and organizations like CTIA to really educate the market and talk about the benefits it brings. And I think with some of the things we have been doing at Mobile World Congress or also in New Orleans, it becomes more evident for everyone that this journey to 5G is very important for the United States of creating prosperity and new jobs. And so we need to find the right way to have easy permitting construction guidelines to roll out the small cells that are necessary. Absolutely a very important topic, and I think the FCC is very much aware of it.
Yeah, and I think one of your partners is Mobility. They filed a motion with the FCC that seems to get like favorable a reception there. And you know, my most recent report, I do a report for CTIA every couple of years on the impact of wireless on the U.S. economy, and it shows that for every 10 megahertz that the U.S. carriers deploy, employment goes up by 100,000 people, and GDP goes up by $3 billion. So it's a no-brainer to do this.
Absolutely. And I mean, those economic effects, probably we need to communicate them even more so that they become known to a broader audience, and that will drive, I guess, an intrinsic motivation to go faster on this journey, in this journey to 5G.
You mentioned smart cities. What do you think will be like the first thing around smart cities and the new network that the network that you're enhancing with carrier aggregation and MIMO?
Well, I think a logical element of smart cities is easier access to government and municipality services. So a lot of things you have to do as a citizen to gain permissions, to get information from your local authorities. I think that will form a big part of that. There is a lot of information available around traffic. So might it be individual traffic, car traffic, or in places where it exists, public traffic? I think that is a natural area of interest. And those will be things that will start because they will enhance everyone's life. If you are commuting every day by public transport, you want to know when the public transport is leaving, when it's delayed, when there is a problem. And the same thing is true if you're commuting by car. You want to know, is my route free? Is there any trouble? Should I take an alternative route? So that is a very natural starting point. Over time, these things might develop further into, I could envision services where government becomes available via video call. So you make an appointment, but it's not necessary to show up in person. You might do a video call to get a building permit or to get any other questions you might have as a citizen. So those things, I think, will be there in the beginning.
Great.
Perfect. Well, Roger, if you don't mind, I want to jump in. I have a couple questions of my own. Guenther, if you could, I want to take it back to the 64 by 64 MIMO. Back at Mobile World Congress, we were talking to you and John Saw, and we were discussing kind of the idea that Sprint's particular network will give it a first mover advantage when it comes to 64 by 64 MIMO. Can you talk about that? How Sprint might be able to be the first one to move on massive MIMO and why?
Yes, so I think there's already a lot of proof that we are the first ones really moving into it because we have done this demonstration, as you know, with Nokia at the Mobile World Congress. We also showcased it in New Orleans. The reason, the underlying physical reasons is massive MIMO is easier done in high band spectrum, and that's a function of the wavelength. The wavelength in high band allows you to have very small antenna elements, and that allows you to have this massive amount of antenna elements that form a massive MIMO antenna. That's why we also know it's much harder to realize that because of the form factor in mid-band and nearly impossible in low band because the antenna just becomes physically too big. The other thing that makes it easier is if you look at massive MIMO, it's easier implemented in TD-LTE, time division LTE. And that's what we are using. And those two things, high band and time division LTE, give us an advantage in the implementation of this technology.
Perfect. I have one more question before I open it back up to Roger to help me dig into some of the maybe tougher elements. But one of the things I wanted to address is Sprint has been talking about its spectrum advantage when it comes to unlimited. I mean, we've been hearing so much about unlimited, not just from you guys, but from all of the four major carriers. So I'm wondering, what is your position on unlimited as it relates to spectrum and capacity?
Well, a very good question. So my friend Dr. Saw recently had a blog that he titled "In the Land of Mobile Unlimited, Spectrum is King," and I think that sums it up very well. What we think we have is a great foundation because we have the best spectrum with the 2.5 spectrum. In the top 100 markets of the US, we have on average more than 160 megahertz. That gives us a very solid foundation. On top of that, with time division LTE, we have the best technology. This technology was invented for data transmission. It's the foundation for 5G. It's the best technology for unlimited data. And then the third factor is our customers and Sprint as a company, we have been selling unlimited for the last 10 years. We have a lot of experience. We know how to handle that huge amount of traffic per user. And those three factors make me very confident that we have a great network for unlimited customers today, and we will keep having one, especially as we talked before with things like Massive MIMO, where we can easily further enhance the capacity of our network wherever it's needed.
Perfect. Roger, do you have a digging question to lead off, or do you want me to go ahead?
You're right. I always say you have the most spectrum in this country, which, and since capacity is also a proxy for speed, it should make you the fastest carrier in the country. And I think that would be such a wonderful differentiation for Sprint that makes it very difficult for others to emulate. When do you think we'll see Sprint, climb up in the speed charts and take the crown here?
Well, this is a multifaceted question, and let me try to answer many of the aspects you touched on. So first, I would say many of the independent benchmarks have shown that we are the most significantly improved network, and also when it comes to speed. There were several benchmarks. Computer World called us the happiest carrier because we had improved so much. In several of the benchmarks, our average speed has more than tripled over the last year. So we have made a lot of progress. We continue to improve, and that brings me to my second aspect. What is really relevant for consumers, I think, is what you call a jump function. So speed is relevant till a certain amount, then it becomes irrelevant, because a normal user doesn't see any benefit whether he has, let's say, 20 megabits per second or 50 megabits per second speed, because a normal user uses on average 2 to 3 megabits per second. There's very little applications beside file transfer where you use higher speeds. If you watch an HD video, it's normally compressed down to 2 to 3 megabits per second. And so that is another aspect of the answer I wanted to give. And another aspect is we are continuing to roll out our network, and we will go into that direction, but it will be over time. Because first we focus on the reliability of our network, because we have seen in many of our surveys that reliability is the most important thing for our customers.
Yeah, if the network doesn't work, it doesn't matter how fast it is.
True.
Yeah.
Very right. And there is a study by Boston Consulting Group in November last year, where they exactly went into the analysis of those factors. And they say customer satisfaction grows when you have speeds below 2 megabits per second. The moment you reach 2 megabits per second, it is no longer relevant for customer satisfaction.
I completely agree with you. It's just, for the good and bad, consumers think that faster is better, and it doesn't matter what the marginal difference is. And I think for somebody who has this huge amount of spectrum, you can shut up the competition and use that as your differentiating point, rather than fight even more aggressively on price.
Well, and we as I said, we continue to roll out our network. We continue to work with priority on reliability and our densification and optimization strategy. And over time, that will certainly drive us into the direction you mentioned. And I'm looking forward to that. I always say, with regard to our network, you ain't seen nothing yet. There's a lot to come.
I want to jump in, Roger, if you don't mind. I want to play off of your talk about differentiation here. And so, Guenther, if you don't mind answering, one of the things that we've seen is there are unlimited plans from all 4 carriers. How is Sprint communicating its message that your network is improving? I mean, how are you showing customers that they should choose you for unlimited in a world awash in unlimited offers?
Well, I think what we do is we communicate on the one hand that we have an LTE Plus network, an LTE network with LTE advanced features that we're constantly adding to. So a very innovative network that's building on our rich spectrum. So that is one, on the one side, a great network with great opportunities for the future. On the other side, it's clearly that we have very good value for our customers. Our offers are very, very attractive. And we will continue to offer those 2 components to convince customers that unlimited freedom is best enjoyed in the network of Sprint.
And are you seeing that message resonate with customers? And if so, what metrics are you using to track that?
Oh, yes, we see it very much resonating. If you look at our quarter numbers, you see that last quarter was the 9th consecutive quarter of net add growth. And we see that customers are really coming to us because of those 2 aspects. And they like to have an unlimited tariff in our network. And yeah, we're very happy about that.
Okay. And one more question I just wanted to turn to, since you mentioned the quarterly figures. I mean, how is Sprint looking at prepaid in a world that is increasingly a combination of pre and postpaid?
Well, certainly, prepaid is an important complementary tariff model to the postpaid model here in the United States. We like to offer our network to both kinds of customers, and we give the customer the choice. The customer can decide whether he prefers to be in the postpaid world or in the prepaid world. We have very attractive brands in prepaid with Boost and Virgin and our own Sprint brand. So we give customers the choice. However they want to use their data model, they can have it with us.
And how's that Virgin resurgence coming?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
The resurgence of Virgin Mobile, how's that coming?
Oh, that's very good. I mean, Virgin Mobile has a new headquarters in Kansas City in the startup area there. And Dow Draper and his team are making great progress. So also there, like on the network side, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Okay, I'll turn it over to Roger. Roger, do you have any closing questions here?
Well, yes. You know, Guenther, you ran networks around the world, and you bring with that a unique perspective. How is the U.S. different to the other countries where you have had senior roles? I believe in Austria and in Australia. How are they different to the United States?
Well, I think one of the difference to the rather smaller markets in Europe is certainly the bigness of the country. So it is a big country with many different markets. That is a difference to Europe very clearly. In Australia, a similar situation with regard to the land size, but of course, the size of the markets and the volume of the markets much smaller. What makes the US market also pretty unique is this affinity to high tech. So a lot of customers have the newest phones, and that creates a lot of dynamic in the market that you not necessarily have everywhere, because markets, for example, in Eastern Europe, their handset penetration with newest models is going much slower. Here in the US, we have a big ramp with every new phone. And so I think that creates an atmosphere where you really have a very data-oriented, fast-moving, high-tech market. And that makes the US market very interesting and also very challenging for a mobile operator. You need to really have the right ingredients on the network side.
Great.
Great. Roger, do you have anything else, or should we wrap up?
I'm good.
All right, Guenther, well, thank you so much for sitting in our hot seat today. It was a pleasure to have you on for our 100th episode. We thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and good luck for the future of your episodes from the Midwest. It was a pleasure being with you today.
All
Vielen
right,
Dank,
thank you.
Günther. Tschüss.
Alles Gute.
Alles Gute. Danke.
All right, everyone, that's been another episode of Tuesdays with Roger. Thank you all for joining us. And of course, we will be again next week with another episode with Roger Ettner of Recon Analytics.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Have a great week, guys, and we will see you next Tuesday.